Okay, Bill, go ahead.
All righty, we'll call the meeting to order. Gail, can you do roll call without, or do you want to do a verbal roll call?
I can do the verbal, like, can we just read them off?
Sure.
Bill Perkins.
Who?
Bill Perkins,
Yes.
Marcia Harris,
Yes.
Jim Palmer,
Yes.
Lois Bailey,
Yes.
Mark Bevelheimer,
Yes.
Tim Bowen,
Yep.
Pat Deering, John Fletcher,
Yes.
Andrew Gale, Tom McDonald,
Yes.
David McCullough,
Yes.
Peachy Rettenbach, Carrie Sharp, Kathy Ui Jessica,
Yes.
Here's on the line.
Okay, is there any public comment? Okay,
Bill, excuse
Yes.
me, before you go on, we do need to announce if there's any public watching who wants to make comment, they can call 256-8109.
okay. Can I just use that as my statement?
Sure.
All right. All right, we'll move on to staff comments.
Okay, a few updates for you. The household hazardous waste and electronics collection on June 20th was very successful. We held it at Glen Lake School, and for the first time ever, we also held paper shredding. We weren't sure how well that was going to go over, but Comp Renew reported that they filled their entire truck up with materials to shred. So for the first time ever, and a lot of people not knowing about it, I thought that was a really good turnout. The tire recycling was then held the following Saturday at Glen Lake School. I just got the manifest back this morning. There was 921 tires that were collected. We went with just one truck this time because, as you know, there's a additional cost to bring in a second truck, and if you can't get it more than half full, it really doesn't pay to have that second truck. Everything went quite well, especially because we found out just a couple weeks before that Glen Lake School was holding their graduation the same day on the football field. That was unexpected, but everything ran very smoothly. Gail and Molly from my office handled both of those collections and did a great job. And then on the Public Act 69 fee and interlocal agreements, we have all the agreements in place now except one. And that township, Bingham Township, will be meeting later this month, and I'll be in attendance at that meeting to answer any questions they may have.
All right, any questions on those? Marcia?
Trudy, is the Elmwood Township difficult to resolve?
Yes, Tim Bullen and I attended that meeting, and there were very few questions on the interlocal agreement, and it was passed unanimously.
Thanks.
I think David has a question here, Bill. I don't know if you can see him from your screen.
Who didn't turn in their agreement?
Bingham Township. They'll be meeting later this month.
And they have assured us that they're meeting, they won't cancel that meeting?
No one said to me that it would be canceled.
Hope not. Yeah.
I'll let you know if they
Yeah.
cancel.
It's hard to communicate with them if you're trying to see their minutes or their agendas. They don't often post. At least I found that. Maybe I'm looking at planning commission too.
Trudy, I have a question. After we get all of the township approvals, then the county board has to approve it?
No, the county board has taken all the steps that they need to do for this, and the county clerk has the ballot language. All we need is to have all those interlocal agreements in place, and we are giving original documents of those to the clerk's office as they come in. So just our final step is to get this last one, and then the ballot question would be held in every township or village.
Okay, does anybody have any questions? All right, we'll move on to consideration of the agenda. Yes,
Mr. Chairman,
Martha?
I'd like to add conversation about the sale of waste management. No, American Waste. I have some questions.
Okay, we'll put that as F under new business. David, did you have something?
Yeah, I was gonna move that we accept the agenda as amended.
Support. Support? Discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Does anybody see a conflict of interest on anything on the agenda? Can I have a motion for approving the minutes from the March 3rd meeting?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second?
Okay, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Do we have any unfinished business? I don't see any. So we'll move to new business, the recycling grant. So our decision, I guess, is are we going to do it this year or do you want to wait till next year in the spring?
Yeah, Bill, Cassandra Ford from the Recycling Partnership is on Zoom with us today. And she and I have been having several conversations to go over the process for this grant and what we need to have in place and when to move things along. And we still have some information that needs to be put together before we start and some decisions to be made. So I thought it would be good to have Cassandra here and perhaps, Cassandra, if you're willing to maybe just recap things a little bit and let the group know where we're at and what we still need to do to move forward.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you for having me. This is Cassandra Ford. We are putting all of the pieces together to move the program forward. I will say, if you aren't aware, your community is one of 14 that we are funding, many of which are moving forward this year. Several have postponed until next year. It's kind of about a split down the middle, depending on timing for the communities. We are looking at, we've got 2 other communities that are also with that same American Waste facility. So it's yourself, Antrim County, and Manistee County are all grant funded. So we're all looking at a MRF audit at that American Waste facility for all 3 of you towards the end of July. We're looking the week of July 27th. It is possible. We have discussed with them and coordinated with a consultant to do the MRF audit then. That is the beginning of the program. We do a contamination sort at the MRF to essentially get us a baseline contamination rate, and then we implement the program. As Trudy mentioned, there are a few things that we are still working on to lead up to the implementing the program itself, such as the informational card that will be mailed out, as well as the materials that will be handed out on site or displayed on site so that people can take a picture of them. That's then additional educational materials. We're looking at a survey. We're creating right now, we're in the process of creating a survey for someone to give to patrons at the site, verbally give to them to essentially provide that direct contact engagement. And so those will need to be completed, obviously, before the program gets underway. I know there was some discussion about being able to complete the program, the 4-week program, before Labor Day. And so that our timing would be tight, but it is doable. So we would need to, obviously, if we conduct the MRF audit the end of July, we would need to audit the sites themselves the month of August in order to complete everything prior to Labor Day. as requested.
Could you describe auditing the sites? What would actually happen?
Of course. So the on-site audit is essentially a person, a staff person or a volunteer would go to the site and spend a set number of hours on site. Typically, we say about 4 hours. That could be one day a week. It could be multiple days per week. Again, depending on the number of sites you're auditing. That would take place for 4 weeks in a row. While that person is on site, they would be engaging with patrons that are coming to drop material off. They would be reviewing the materials that they've brought to the facility and giving them feedback in terms of whether or not things they brought are recyclable or whether or not they brought things that are not recyclable, giving them that direct feedback, as well as giving them a short survey that talked about how they got their information and what they were bringing and their feedback regarding the recycling site itself. And so that direct feedback we find has the most impact on participation. And so that would happen at each of the sites for a 4-week period of time. And then we would do a second audit at the MRF to establish contamination rate at the end of the program. So we're looking at essentially the baseline information at the beginning, direct engagement for 4 weeks on site, and then another evaluation of contamination at the end to determine behavior change.
So when you say on site, do you mean that we would have somebody on site for each of our recycling sites for 4 hours a week for 4 weeks?
Correct. And I did email Trudy this morning after a discussion with American Waste regarding your collection cycles, the way that your material is collected from your drop-off sites. We determined that 7 of your locations, essentially all of your drop-off locations except for Empire, the one in Empire, that all of the other 7 are collected together in one truck and taken to the American Waste facility. Empire is combined with another county's material and some commercial sites. So what we would do in terms of the audit of the materials itself, we would be auditing the 7 locations that are collected together and just your material, so we can get a baseline number for just your material. So it would be 7 of the 8 locations, which is pretty good. So it would be up to you to determine whether or not you want to match the on-site auditing with the MRF auditing and saying you'd only on-site audit those 7, and you would essentially use that information as a county information, even though one site would be excluded. Or you could go ahead and on-site audit all 8 of them, knowing that you wouldn't have physical tonnage data for that one location, but it would be perfectly fine to extrapolate that across the county.
And do we want a car count for each recycling site for an entire week, perhaps?
So that is something we've discussed with Trudy about participation rate, establishing that participation rate at the beginning. That's great information to have. So we can really, it's another data point we can show regarding the impact of the program. So if you can get the participation rate before and the participation rate after, it gives you that, that additional data point to show impact on your program. Because we will be mailing out educational material to every household in the county. So you'd be able to measure the increase in participation if you have that baseline at the beginning. That is something we've discussed. Trudy's got some options in terms of security cameras or trail cams that could be put up on site. You could use volunteers to sit out on site and get a car count at the beginning. But yeah, in a way, trying to find some way to track some number from the sites in the beginning would be very useful.
Yes, Marcia?
One of the difficulties of the car count, I think we might have talked about it, is this the tourists and the seasonality. For example, where I am, the increases are probably due to tourists. And what we get in July or August is going to be very different, no matter what kind of intervention, than we get in October or November. So I'm questioning the value of participation at some of the sites, given how much of it is tourist related.
That's a valid point. We do try to keep a program like this, what we consider an anti-contamination program. We try to keep the entire program within a season so that you're not creating your baseline in a different season than you're creating the post program information, so that you can really be able to compare them against each other. So as long as we do the participation numbers and the pre-sort in the same season, so we're doing them both in the summer, we're doing everything in July, August before Labor Day, the level should remain the same. The outreach, the contamination rate, the impact change should still be consistent. Whereas if you did the entire program in the spring, you're doing the entire program with residents,
Right.
You'd still see that same participation, like the percentage change. We're still hoping to see the same percentage of change. You're just talking to a different group of people, possibly.
Now tell me, is this a consideration that the tourists would never receive your mailing?
That's entirely possible. So our mailings go out to every single family household. So it really varies depending on whether or not these are owner occupied houses and they're secondary houses, seasonal housing, or if they are rental housing, where the mailings go, where the mail itself goes. That's part of the reason for the survey. The on-site survey is to also capture some of that data on whether or not they are a resident or whether or not they are from from out of town, they're a vacationer. So that's again part of the reason Trudy indicated your desire to have the program completed before Labor Day, because that's when a lot of your population leaves their summer house and goes, so that secondary wave of information of educational material would not reach the right people. So that is some of that question, that is some of that variability within your program. I think what we need to do is decide whether or not you want to target this program entirely to the resident population and do it in a spring timeframe, or whether or not you want to try to capture all the population, including your seasonal people. And so you're doing it during a time where you're going to capture both the residents and the seasonal, which would be more your summer timeframe. So it's entirely up to you. You're going to see an influx in material, so an influx in contamination during the seasonal times. That's one of the reasons we highlight on-site education as well as signage at the sites as well. So we increase the signage that's at the sites themselves. So if people are seasonal, they don't live there, they may be bringing information from their home and not know what is recyclable in your community. They can go to one of those sites, see the signage there, know what is recyclable in your community, and we'd still have that impact change that we want. But it is kind of, it can be handled either way. Some communities are choosing to do more of a resident population, and they're moving towards the spring of next year. That's totally fine. We're seeing a lot of program changes right now because of COVID. And so a lot of people aren't traveling. A lot of people aren't moving around or vacationing. So there's a lot of fluctuation right now with our programs and how we're handling them.
I have a question for Mark. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Is your sense that the contamination level is higher during the summer with all the rentals than during the residential year, or not?
I would say, I'm not sure on that.
Okay. I mean, I've been to the Glen Arbor site recently, and it appears that there is more contamination now than in the past. And the city, I mean, Glen Arbor is just packed with people. So that's just my sense of contamination. It may not have any influence on what we decide to do.
And that is one of the reasons we track contamination by percentage and not just straight tonnage numbers, because we do know that participation and tonnage numbers go up during the summer. They go up with seasonal populations. They're going up right now because of COVID and because the majority of our waste is coming from a residential setting right now and not from a commercial setting. So, you know, we know that all of these things will have fluctuations within the numbers and within the programs. But if we track it by percentage and say we do the evaluation at American Waste for your community and we say, you know, your contamination rate is 38%, we do the program and then we measure again and we find that your contamination has gone down, you know, to 15%, you know, that it's an evaluation of the overall tonnage and the overall contamination percentage rate. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for impact change overall.
For a car count, do you think if during just the 4 hours a week, the cars were physically counted by the staff person or volunteer that was there, would that be good enough?
So for the participation rates, we like to have at least a full week of data for each site for essentially a full day. So we're looking for more complete numbers for participation rate. So then we can determine based on that participation rate, maybe determine the peak hours for each site, the peak day or the peak hours, and then that would be the best day to actually have somebody on site for that 4-hour window. So we know when it's busiest and we can have a more direct engagement with more patrons. So for the participation rates, typically, if you don't have a volunteer who's willing to sit out there and sit on site and track cars, you know, 8 hours a day for a whole week, that's one of the great ways of using possibly a traffic counter. If you have access to traffic counters, or if, you know, buying the security cams, the trail cams that can monitor the sites and essentially turn on and capture a video when somebody comes into the site and then turn back off, and then somebody can just go through and count those people and track that through the security cam or through the trail cam. That's useful as well. And all of those things are covered under the grant budget.
Yeah, Marcia.
I have one more question. In terms of efficacy, for example, if I were standing at the Glen Arbor and looking and monitoring what they brought and the level of contamination, it's likely that that person is leaving and will not return for the rest of the summer. Therefore, any instructions that I give them really won't have any effect until the following year. So it's a point to be considered, that the level of instruction or the kinds of things that could be told would be usually at the end of a visit. So I guess, am I thinking that maybe we shouldn't be doing the seasonal one and just try to focus more on residential? I'm not sure. It's a question I have about how effective it would be to instruct somebody as they leave and are not going to return.
That's a valid point. And I would say that could be something that you determine, you with the survey, one of the first questions that's asked is, what is your zip code? And if you determine the person is not a resident and they are just there temporarily and they're leaving that day, then, maybe that's the end of your engagement with them. Or you just say, that's not allowed. Don't put it in our recycling bins, and you fix the contamination for that individual for that day.
At that moment.
Exactly. And so, and then the more permanent education or the long lasting education can be given to people who do have a local zip code. That's a completely reasonable option.
Bill, that's one of the questions for the Solid Waste Council today, is to decide whether or not you want to start this recycling grant project this year yet and finish it up by Labor Day, or if you want to wait till next year. We do have time in the grants to wait if that's what the Solid Waste Council determines. If you're going to go ahead with it, there are a lot of steps that need to be taken care of and need to be done pretty quickly so that we can stay on schedule. So that's one of the first questions the Solid Waste Council needs to answer here today.
Okay. All right, Kathy, did you have something? You're muted.
Okay, I just wanted to concur what Marcia was saying. The Empire recycling area, my husband and I visited about every 2 weeks, and this last week, it was atrocious. There was so much garbage and things that we've never seen at the site before, like a radiator, car radiator, and gutters, jammed in, and just a terrifically bad mess. So I just want to make that comment. It's pretty bad.
Okay. I just have one more question for you, Cassandra. So we vote on PA 69, and we were considering sending out an information piece to all of the residents of Leelanau County. Could we piggyback that with the information that will be sent out for this project?
Possibly, without seeing the information, I don't know. The two required pieces for this grant, they're funded by this grant. The two required pieces are an educational info card at the beginning that's mailed out to every resident that is a front and back with information about where the drop-off locations are, as well as what's allowed there. And then a secondary mailed piece that happens during the middle of the grant that is a top issue mailer, which means that the biggest issue we found regarding contamination during the audit would be a standalone mailed piece. It's typically, bagged recycling or bags in your recycling, or whatever the biggest contamination issue is. It's a full-size, full postcard that goes to each resident. So those are the two required pieces under the grant. If there was a way to blend the information without losing any of the impact on either of them, I think it's something we could discuss.
Okay, all right.
But yeah, it just kind of depends on the messaging and the timing.
Okay, let's discuss as a board, do we want to do this in the summer, or do we want to wait till next spring, which will be more locals rather than second homers?
So waiting till spring, can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead, Lois.
Waiting till spring seems like it might be practical with the COVID infection going on and people being nervous about being approached. If you're trying to do a personal survey on site. And the other thing I was thinking is if you're doing an on-site survey, you need to do it on randomized times. So you're not always seeing the same person whose habit is to drop off on Saturday morning. Randomize it during the day somehow. And I don't know if that's suggested in the grant. It is? Okay.
Well, what do people think about summer versus spring? David McCullough, what do you think?
Well, it's always busier in the summer than it is any other time of the year. And it starts picking up about Memorial Day, which is still spring, of course. And in the middle of the winter, it's, it's the low time of activity. So I don't think we need a survey to tell us that. And what is the survey really going to tell us? What are you looking for the survey to tell you?
Okay. Yeah, Marcia.
I think our choice is, well, I feel that Trudy feels that, I believe that Trudy believes that there's a lot to get done if we were going to do the survey in July, 1. 2, I think we have to decide if we want to focus on residents or summer. So.
Well, they're all users, but yeah, I get what you mean.
Right. I think those are three, one is a question of timing and one is a question of target. We want to target residents, we want to target visitors, and the timing.
Does anybody else have a thought? Does anybody else want to chime in on this?
I guess the only thing I would say is we just want to make sure this don't mess up your vote and confuse people. Because in November, they're gonna vote. And this will be a busy summer and a lot of stuff, and people tend to not read when you start shoving a bunch of stuff down their throat, and they might be thinking you're taking stuff away from them. I would be more inclined to not do it now.
So you're saying spring?
That's what I would think. I mean, you got a pretty, like, the most important vote for us coming up. And you don't want to send a mixed signal.
Okay. Mark, what do you think?
Fairly flexible, whatever the board would like to do, we're good either way. We could do it in August, I mean in July or in the spring. But with Jim brought up a good point also. With the folks went up with the residents, why confuse them more what they can and can't do. But we're flexible, whatever you'd like to do.
Right. Tim, what do you think?
I think, with everything that's going on right now, it just, in my mind, seems logical to wait till springtime.
You think spring?
Yes, with COVID and everything that's been going on of late, to me, it makes a lot of sense just to hold off.
Okay. John, what do you think?
This year is an anomaly. I think it's an exception, and I would agree with spring.
Trudy, what do you think?
As staff, we're gonna do whatever the solid waste council decides. My one thought with this year is the timeline is pretty scrunched right now. Everything's gotta fall in place really quickly in order for us to get it all done. We can do it, but it will be a little tighter than if we wait.
Okay. Carrie, what do you think?
Definitely spring.
Yeah. And I'm inclined to say spring as well. Could we get some of the stuff done in the MRF audit done ahead of time, or would we wait for spring for that as well?
We would wait. In that situation, we try to do the MRF audit directly before the program begins. But as Trudy mentioned, there are several things we can do in advance. We can prepare all of the educational materials. We can buy all the supplies. We can prepare for all of that and have all of that ready to go. And immediately, as soon as we're ready to go in the spring, in March, then we hit the ground running. So it's completely possible. And as Trudy mentioned, the grant contract allows that flexibility in that time frame. So I believe our contract goes until I think November of next year. So we have plenty of time and opportunity to conduct the program next year without any type of grant amendment or anything.
Okay. Okay, folks, do you think we need to vote on this? Yes, Marcia?
I'm going to propose that I'm going to make a motion that we delay the start of the program until next spring.
Do I have a second? You second that, Kathy?
I do.
Oh.
Carrie.
Okay, we have a motion to delay this program until spring. Does everybody understand it?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That sounds pretty unanimous. We'll go with next spring.
Thanks for your input, Cassandra.
Of course. Thank you.
I hope this is okay with you.
Absolutely. We're here to help in any way that we can.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, educational information for our PA 69 vote in November. We did this before. Trudy, do you want to recap this a little bit?
Sure. What we did 10 years ago was provided information to residents regarding the PA 69 vote. And it has to be information only. It cannot be anything that will sway a voter one way or the other. So all of this information that you have on these 2 pages in your packet, or 3 pages, was information that we developed in our office and through the Solid Waste Council, and then we ran it by the county clerk, who also reviewed it to make sure that we were, staying neutral, that we were providing information to the voters about what the vote was, how much it was for, what would the money be used for, and so forth. And so these are examples of what was done 10 years ago. The first 2 pages are a postcard. There's actually 2 postcards on here, and then they were cut in half so that we had a mailing address. We had the ballot language so that they would see it before they got into the voting booth. And then we had some basic information for them to review. And then they had the phone numbers and so forth to contact for more information. And then page 12 of your packet is a similar thing. This is a handout that was done, again, including the ballot language, some information, and a little chart there as well. So one of these, this one actually was from 2006. This was the first one we did, which was for a 5-year ballot issue. So what I wanted to find out from you today is if you want to do this again. If so, what we would do is develop these or revise them, get them to the county clerk to review them to make sure that they're neutral, and then we could have them approved at your next meeting so that we could get things printed out and ready to go out to residents. And we actually did mail them out to all residents 10 years ago.
Do you remember the cost?
The printing cost was, I believe, $1,700. And then, of course, you have to add the postage in there, but there's a number of different ways to do this. We wouldn't necessarily have to mail it to everyone. We could do it as flyers. We could get some out in different locations. We could maybe have them handed out at the recycling sites. There's just a number of different ways to do it. So I could research that and then bring you back numbers for your next meeting along with draft copies of these if you want to proceed in that way. It's similar to what Senior Services has done with their millage request, where they put out information so people understand what they're voting on and what the money would be used for if it's approved.
Would it be possible to put how much we've recycled since the program's been in?
Sure.
I mean, it's got to be a big number after 10 years.
Yep, we could do that. We could put in the volumes of hazardous waste materials and electronics, tires. We could put all that information in some kind of a chart or graphic.
Marcia?
I propose that Trudy and the staff develop materials for review in our next meeting regarding.
Okay, we have a motion that Trudy and staff put this together for our next meeting for approval. I need a second.
A second.
Kathy seconds. Discussion?
Can I just ask Trudy, on the handouts in the past, I don't see a list of all of the sites. Would that be included in the revision?
We can put anything on that the Solid Waste Council wants.
I would like to see that.
Okay.
Any more discussion? Everybody understand the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that's what we'll do. Okay. C under new business is review of recycling sites and any issues / additional sites. I might be able to address that. At Sutton's Bay, we have a noise issue where the recycling site is located now. It's in a parking lot that backs up on First Street in Suttons Bay Village. And the solution would be to move it to the parking lot behind the senior high school, which is far from any residences and is actually bermed on 3 sides. We would need permission to discuss that with Suttons Bay Schools. Their superintendent could just do it as sort of housekeeping, and Lois, Bailey, and myself sort of have a bit of a relationship with the superintendent, so we would ask if we can do that from the solid waste board, I think. Does that make sense?
And it's, I think it's a twofold problem because the number of bins in Suttons Bay has increased since the Lake Leelanau site was closed. So there's some issues in encouraging Leland to pick up some of the slack and find a location that would work and reduce the number, the volume in Suttons Bay as well.
Yes, that was actually a point brought up by one of the residents that lived on First Street, that Leland Township was now bringing all of their recycling to Suttons Bay, and the increased volume meant increased noise. So that would be one thing that Lois and I would work on, as well as trying to get Leland Township to step up and build a recycling site. Do we need a motion or anything, or can we just do it? Trudy, do we need a motion to do this?
I don't think so. Just, you know, the two of you already have, you know, correspondence with them, and, you know, you're trying to help resolve the issue. So I don't think that it needs any motion.
Okay.
Unless you feel more comfortable having the board make a motion for you.
I'm fine with it. What do you think, Lois?
Well, it seems if we have consensus, no one's objecting to Bill and I trying to mitigate this problem by moving the site in Suttons Bay, and, you know, friends that I have to try to encourage a site in Leland as well.
Okay.
Don't hear any objection.
And I just wanted to share that I have gotten some correspondence from the village. I did forward on to you. There was an individual who actually sent a little video clip for you to watch too, and you can hear the noise that, and it's, you know, there's quite a bit of noise there. It's interesting though, because we have other locations which are in villages and fairly close to residences, I think, and we have not had any complaints in those particular situations, but we are hearing them in Suttons Bay. So I'm glad that Bill and Lois are able to talk to some individuals there and see if there's something that can be worked out. We're still trying to look at something in the Leland, like Leelanau area. Commissioner Patricia Sotis Little has been trying very hard at that. And she informed me that next Monday, the township board will be meeting, and supposedly they're going to discuss this again. I have not seen their agenda yet, but that's what I've heard anyway. And all of the sites, Mark can probably add more information to this, but all of the sites are really seeing high volumes. It is disturbing to get in the office and get phone calls or emails of the junk that is left at the sites. And it's difficult, perhaps with this recycling grant we can address this, but it's been difficult to get it through people's mind that, you know, just because the gutter is made of metal doesn't mean that we're taking it. You know, the signs can only do so much. I've had that information or that response from people who are recycling large plastic, or, you know, they'll say, well, it's made of plastic. Well, it's a playground, you know, or it's a pool. It doesn't go in here. Look at the sign. But I think once they get to that point where they've loaded up the large piece of whatever it is they're bringing, they want to unload it somewhere, and unfortunately it's at these sites. the cameras at the sites, if we can get those through this grant, that could be very helpful to be able to state that all of those sites are now monitored by camera, and then there'd be a way to go back and look at that, even to grab license plates and follow up on something. We did follow up with one in Cedar, actually followed up on a couple. We were able to get names off the cardboard boxes and mail letters out to individuals that they had left stuff that was not supposed to be there, it was outside, it was, even the recycling material was not flattened down. And then someone else, we turned it over to the sheriff's department to see if they could find, they had the license plate number to see if they could follow up with the individual on the materials that were left. So we will follow up whenever we have the information. And Mark, if there's anything else that you want to add to that?
So everything there is.
So I wondered if you start to see certain items that are chronically left, because they make the assumption that, yes, the playground equipment can go there, if there's a way to, you know, no, we don't take this, but if you need to put this, drop this somewhere, then this is the place to take it. So if you give them, you say no, but you give them the alternative. Here's how you deal with this.
That might be helpful. Just from the years of seeing this, I think, you know, no matter how much signage we put out, some people are just not going to read it.
That's true.
If they can dump it, they're going to dump it.
Yep.
They're going to leave, and, you know, maybe they'll get caught, maybe they won't, but they want to unload it, and that's where it goes.
I've stopped saying things to people because last couple times I did, people were belligerent. There's a guy putting bike tires in. I said those don't belong, and he just said something not very nice. So
Well, you can always send them to Glenn's landfill. They have a steel recycling there anyway. Okay, shall we move on to D of new business?
Bill, before you do that, just real quickly, one of the things I was wondering about is some of the townships hold these spring cleanups, and we don't have it throughout the entire county. So in the spring, we start getting calls from different residents in different townships saying, why doesn't my township do a spring cleanup? So I'm just wondering if maybe at some point we should discuss trying to promote and get all of the communities to do a spring cleanup, because we're getting the stuff at the recycling sites. If all of the communities were able to do this, maybe that would help in some way to get rid of those large bulky items that people want to get rid of before we start seeing them at the collection sites. So if we want to consider that in the future, find out how many are doing it, how much does it cost, how can the Solid Waste Council help promote that and get it started everywhere?
It's a good idea, and because Sutton's Bay canceled their spring cleanup, maybe we have a bigger voluntary drop off of the wrong materials, just because that didn't happen.
The village did resend it.
Oh, they did?
Yes, yes. I think it's in August or September.
The village, not the township.
Yeah, not the village. So Bingham, Suns Bay, Village of North Park,
Okay.
and then the Village of Suns Bay, there is a.
I haven't been aware of that yet, but then there's canceled so many meetings, it's hard to keep up.
We in Glen Arbor had a spring cleanup for 3 or 4 years, and this year they canceled it. It ran about $10,000 for the spring cleanup. It was canceled, and one of our responses was, I'm guessing you're going to see more junk left at the site, and it happened. I think this is a really good idea. If we promote these, and I don't know if there's any money where we could give a percentage or, you know, grant money to each township or village who's willing to do this. I think it will, people, when it was canceled here in Glen Arbor, people were very disappointed in not being able to do it. And I think it was a direct correlation between the cancellation and increased junk at the sites.
Was it only, Marcia, was it only for residential, or were commercial allowed to participate too?
Only residential. If you
So perhaps that's something the Solid Waste Council could consider in the future, using PA 69 because it's charged on the residential, if there's a way to somehow use some funding to offset what the communities are doing so that everybody can do it.
I think that's a really good, innovative idea. And you know, I was surprised that they canceled it. You know, Glen Arbor is pretty flush, but they saw $10,000 that they could have, you know, cut, and they did. So I propose that we table this and discuss it at a future meeting.
Okay.
One more, Village of Suns Bay is September 14th,
Okay.
on a Monday.
So please, Trudy, can you put it on our agenda for the next meeting?
Yes.
Or if it's too busy, the one after that.
Yes, I will. Thank you.
Can you figure out what we should do, Marcia? A
Okay.
strategy.
I'll make a proposal, put it together. But I'll have to look at the budget. Well, whatever, I'll do something.
All right. Okay, can we move on to D, consideration of support of Part 115 of the solid waste, the state solid waste bill? So do we want to send in a support from our solid waste board?
Yes.
Yes? Marcia says yes?
I say yes. I read their letter and I think we should.
Okay, some of us have sent in individual ones in support. What is the status of it right now, Trudy? Has it been voted on yet, or?
I wasn't aware you were going to ask me that today, so I have to say I'm not ready to answer that. I have to check on it. I know the local group, the MMAC, has been looking for copies of any resolutions or letters that counties have sent in regard to support to the changes to Part 115. So that's why it's on your agenda today, to see if you wanted to consider that. You know, if Mark or Jim has any other information on the updates.
I do not.
Ever
Mark?
since this stuff happened, everything got quiet. I mean, since COVID happened.
Well, I propose that we send in a letter of support for this. It's fairly straight up bipartisan collecting data. So,
I second.
okay, everybody understand that we would be sending in a letter of support of this Part 115. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okey doke, let's do that. And put it on our letterhead with our logo. Okay, we'll go down to E under new business, the amendment of our solid waste plan. What do we have so far, Trudy? That is going to be your department.
Okay, starting on page 14 of your packet, this is just a list. At the top of this list shows the counties with approved amendments and the approval date. So you can see quite a few counties throughout the state have made changes to their solid waste management plan. And then the ones that are amending their plan are listed down below, and Leelanau County is in there as drafting the amendment. And of course, we don't have any other checks across the line here because that's where we're starting the process. So then I included for you some frequently asked questions on the amendment process. We've already done the steps to file the notice of intent with the state. I did check with them because we filed a notice several years ago and then we kind of stopped. We were all waiting to hear if the state was going to require us to amend the plan, and that never happened. So the state told me, send us a new notice of intent. The county board approved that a few months ago, and that was sent in, and they also approved appointing this solid waste council, the 14 members, as the solid waste management planning committee. And your positions all meet the requirements under that act, so we're good to go. So now what we would do is the actual actually start the process of going back to that plan. And we do have already work that was done by Tim Bullen and Andy Gale, but it's been quite a year, so we need to just revisit everything, look at what we're gonna amend in the plan and get that started. My thought was we could put this on your agenda for next month. Staff could draw up some draft documents for you to start looking at and, get going on this, because once we begin it, it's gonna be probably 12 to 18 months by the time we finish everything, do our public notices, get to all the townships and villages and get their approvals, and then bring it back to the county board before we ever submit it to the state. So it does take a while.
Okay, that sounds good. For our next meeting, you bring that information, what we want to do and all that sort of thing.
Okay, and if any members have proposed changes that they want to see in the document, it would be helpful if an email was sent to me so that we can take that into account as we start drafting these documents up.
All right. Good. And it is time to start that. All right. Okay. I'm going to do the F that Marcia added. You wanted to know about the sale of American Waste?
Yeah, I want to with Mark's. I didn't even know it was sold. And does it have any effect on you, or does it have, or our collections, or anything?
The sale happened in February, so it's going on 6 months, and all existing management's still aboard. There's been no major changes, same philosophy. The only different changes you'll see is you'll start to see some, we call them GFL green cans and totes, and so that's, if it's, the cans and totes are quite, you can't miss them. They're lime green, and so far, all indications are everything's great. There's been no changes, and basically they're really hands off. And the reason for the sale was Mike and Ed. Their GFL is very similar with the environmental and the American Waste. There's another portion of American Waste with Northern A1 that was actually larger than American Waste. It was a 3-month decision that there was a few of us that were involved in it, and to the best interest of the company for all the employees, not just the American Waste, but also the Northern A1 employees, which there's offices in Pennsylvania, Kalamazoo, Whitehall, and then of course Kalkaska. And then the other consideration was that Mike and Ed have no heirs. Their children are, they're freshmen at college, and so far it's been a great marriage, and the management has been very great to deal with, very low key. We met the CFO and the CEO, and every possible person you can. They've done visits, and it's been really very, very good transition.
So do we no longer refer to you as American Waste? What do we call you now?
We are American Waste, a GFL company. A GFL company. But as you see, the trucks that are coming still says American Waste on them. The only, eventually I would say maybe in 10 years everything will be green. But the only thing that we're changing in green is if there's any new trucks that we purchase or are paint, get painted the GFL green. So it is going to be a slow transition. The only immediate changes was the color of the cans and totes.
Is there a way, Mark, is there a way that a consumer can find out what days you're going to be coming to a certain site? I had someone call me and say, when do they come? So I know when not to be, when to go.
We've provided the schedule to both Gail and Trudy. All the sites in Leelanau County are on a schedule, 3 to 4 to 5 times a week to 6 times a week. In fact, this Sunday, we actually emptied Elmwood, and then we also came up to Sutton Bay to empty because we know that Monday would have been a very overflow issue.
So Trudy, we could get that information from you?
Or myself, I mean, I'll have it, I can send that out to everyone.
Okay, please do.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Marcia, to answer that, you're still getting the same great service at your house, so that's all that matters.
No, that's not all that matters.
And I'm still here.
Yeah. I miss not joking with you.
Oh.
We have so much to talk about.
There you go.
Okay, any more questions on that? Mark? Okay, committee reports. David, do you have something for us?
Well, I sat in on the MMAC meeting, nothing happened because of the COVID. It's just an overview, a rehashing of things that they're thinking about doing, and no conclusions were reached.
Okay,
So that's my report.
all right. Do we have any communications or correspondence, Trudy?
Just items that we received with regard to the Suttons Bay recycling site, and I already reviewed those and then passed them on to you as well.
All right. Any public comments? Any other staff comments?
A reminder to turn in your travel sheets if you have them here today. September will be tire collection here at the Government Center. It's the second and last one for the county this year. I'm hoping to get 2 semis full of tires this time, but I don't know if we'll make it or not. We'll do more advertising. The other thing I'd like to look at for next year, if possible, is a grant, if we can get one from the state, to deal with these sites that have large numbers of tires on their property. We know of several of them that have hundreds of tires that are on their properties, and unfortunately, just taking 10 or so off, every time we do a collection is not making much of a dent in it. Our hauler is more than willing to work with us on getting these tires off sites. There would be a cost, of course, but I am looking to see if we can get any grant funds to entice these property owners to get them out of their backyard or their backwoods, whatever. There was one last year, we found out a farmer, he has 500 to 600 tires in the basement of his barn. And he's just stored them there for years and years and years. And of course, I wonder, well, if we have fire, we've got a big issue here in Leelanau County because that will burn for a very long time and people will not be happy. So we'll look at that for next year, see if there's anything we might be able to get to help out. Then we have a October collection, hazardous waste collection. First we have a September collection at Shabbytown, an October collection in Elmwood Township, and then we added one more October collection to make up for the May one that we canceled. So that is budget dependent, is what I told both of our haulers. So as we get closer to that date, we'll just make sure that the funds are available and hold one more collection. We had a lot of disappointed residents when we canceled out the May one, and of course the June one at Glen Lake School filled up. That was a big collection. And that's it for staff comments.
Any member comments?
Mr. Chairman, when's our next meeting?
Trudy, could you?
Yep. Should have the schedule on here. So it would be, it's the.
I have 9/8.
Yeah.
September 8th.
Yeah.
September 8th.
Yeah, I got that. Okay.
Yes, at 1 o'clock.
Okay. All right, any other comments from members? And nothing much from me, except that, yes, we are getting an awful lot of junk that is, doesn't make us look good.
No, agreed.
All right, How about a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
See you all in September.
Thanks, everyone.
Being so far away. So June,